Welcome to Learn or Be Learned. We've been working on this project for a while now, and we're finally ready to share it with you. It's been under works for a good minute, and if you're on YouTube or Spotify, congratulations, you're watching the first video podcast of Learn or Be Learned. This is the setup that I've been working on. This is the other project for Season 2. Season 2 is going to have video podcasting, but before that, this is the mini-series about real estate and real estate investing, mindset, all of that with my two good buddies that are great realtors. They share not only their mindsets about buying your first home, buying your first rental property, the mindset of scaling and money and how all this works, but it's also the first time that we got to do a big project together, got to do a whole video podcasting, and I learned a lot. That's kind of why that's why everything's been so inconsistent, I could say. So, I appreciate your patience and your support and sharing these videos and episodes. And I'm really excited to share this with you guys, honestly. And, please let me know what you guys think. And, without further ado, let's get right into this mini series, 6 episodes. We actually recorded them all in one batch, and, rookie mistake, live and learn, but I cut them in segments, but I didn't properly address the ending of each episode. So some of the episodes have all right, catch you in the next episode. And then some of them are just cut right there abruptly. So, live and learn, but I think it was still really awesome, which I'd love to hear what you guys think. And, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Thanks. Here's a simple distinction that I think people are curious about is what is the difference between single family and multifamily?
It's the word itself, right? So if you break the word down, single family, one family, multifamily, more than one family, right? So multifamily is the real estate term, but the more common term is apartments. That's what you can think about. Single family is just your neighborhood house, your suburban house. That's what a single family is.
So multifamilies are just duplexes, apartments.
Duplex, quadplex. But typically when investors are talking about multifamily investing, they're typically talking about apartments. Mm-hmm. It could be a small apartment. It could be a 20-unit apartment. It doesn't have to be a 400-unit apartment, right? Mm-hmm. But although technically a duplex is multifamily, most investors are going to refer it to as a duplex. Okay. A duplex, triplex, or a quadplex. Okay. Anything past 4 homes is legally classified as an apartment, right?
Okay. So what is a good avenue for a beginner investor to dabble in?
That depends on their comfort and level of risk, right? And that's honestly the best way to answer that, because you could dabble in real estate however you want. You can get into multifamily, you can get into duplex or quadplex.
You could do flipping.
You can do flipping. You literally get into
wholesaling. Those are some stuff.
Yeah, so wholesaling. Yeah, for example, so there's so many avenues that you can break into. So at the end of the day, it's like, how comfortable are you with losing your money? Because when you go into real estate investing, you put the money in it, you're not gonna get that back probably like another a year or 2 years, depending on what your timeline is.
It depends on the investment.
And the investment as well. There's so many criteria that just break down. Even now, we're not even agreeing on what type of avenue it is, right? And that I clearly identifies.
It's an ocean.
Yeah, it clearly identifies the fact that there is no one avenue. It's fundamentally how comfortable are you, and what are you trying to get? What's your timeline? Are you trying to get a return out in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And that's based on that we can give you better answers.
So let's talk about if you're talking about young investors, the easiest way to get started is house hacking. I say easiest. It's not easy. It's still hard. Yeah. Still involves risk, and you really have to know what you're doing, but it is the easiest, right? What is house hacking? You should probably Google it. There's a ton of courses on this stuff, right? It's also called co-living. It's where you buy a house for yourself and you live in the master bedroom, and you buy a 4-bedroom house and you get 3 roommates. And the idea is the cost of your utilities, HOA, and your mortgage, which is PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Combining all of these, technically there's 4 plus 2 So six components. The cost of all of those are split amongst those 3 roommates. So the original idea is that you live for free.
And
Now-
build equity, right?
And build equity. They're paying for your equity and paying for your principal pay down. And there's a legal requirement of how long you have to be in that home. Plus, it takes you some time to repair your credit and get your savings together. And then you go buy your next home. And then you can rent out the 4th room, and now you're cash flowing. And then the more you do this, the faster you can do it because you compound. The first couple of years are going to be slow, but once you got maybe 3 houses in, right? The 4th house, you could probably just pay for the whole thing from the other 3 or 4 homes. Is the idea, right? And people have done this very successfully. Now, you still have to qualify for a home by yourself. You know, you still have to be able to afford it, whether in case nobody can pay, you still have to be able to pay it yourself. So there are a lot of requirements to this. But something really unique is that once you have a rental home, it is considered a part of your income for future homes.
Repeat that.
So let's say that you're house hacking and you, right now, you have 3 roommates and 4 rooms and you're about to buy the next one. You can literally tell the mortgage company, I'm going to house hack, right? Okay. Again, maybe defer to your realtor on that one. The mortgage company will take your to soon be coming income from your bedroom that once you move here will generate income as a part of your income.
Okay.
Or at the very least, they will take the 3 other roommates that are paying as income. And so your debt to income ratio is much nicer.
Right.
Or at the very least, balanced. So if you have the same amount of income to debt, it's actually looks like this. It's actually not balanced. Because the more you do it, it looks like your income is greater than your debt. Because over time, your debt gets paid down, but your income stays steady. Right. So the more you do this, the easier it becomes to buy more homes. So that's easiest way to do it. There is a lot of risk involved in that, right? You have vacancies. They're usually month-to-month leases. And you're going to have roommate problems that you get to deal with, right? Your conflict resolution, etc. If you want something more stable and secure, single-family investing is great. But you need to put 20% down. You can't do the 5% down thing, right? Because you're not living in the home. But if you get that, you can have an empty house. You can hand it over to a great property management company. They're going to market it for you, manage it for you. And that rental is going to pay the mortgage. They're paying down your principal. Depending on the market you're in, maybe $100, $150 in your pocket.
Now, there is a workaround to that, correct? Where you could live in the home for a few months or something like that, and then it qualifies as like this is your first time home, and then you can do the 5%.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you
Something like
live
that.
in the house
For a few months. Right?
for like a year,
A year.
I think it's either 6 months or a year, depending on your state.
Okay.
Then you've lived in the home.
Yeah, and then
Then it
you
doesn't
could just
matter.
start-
Then you could do whatever you want. But if you don't want to move into the home, then you have to put 20% down. But if you're ready to move into the home, use it as a second home or something. There's stipulations, by the way. Like if you buy a second home, you have to be able to have unfettered access to it anytime you want. You cannot sign a long-term lease on a second mortgage. That is mortgage fraud. Right?
Why can't you do that?
Because it's a vacation home mortgage. You can't take a
Okay.
vacation home mortgage and then just lease it out completely, right?
Okay.
But you could do an Airbnb or a short-term rental, which I think a lot of people are doing, right? So this way you can get an advantageous interest rate and a low % down. The other really nice part is you got a vacation home. You're legally obligated to vacation there.
Right.
I mean, this is pretty cool, right? So you enjoy your 2 weeks or whatever your legal requirement is. You make sure you document it.
Yeah.
And then you got 50 weeks to rent it.
Right.
And so it's, so that's actually works out very well as well. So if you want to look at, and then you have multifamily syndications or syndications in general, where you have these large commercial properties. Could be a strip mall, could be construction, could be an apartment, could be a warehouse, could be, raw land, where you get a bunch of investors together to pool in money, and then that's your down payment to go to the bank and then get a mortgage and you buy that land and you develop it somehow, or you do a value add multifamily or warehouse where you buy older properties, mismanaged properties, and you renovate them and elevate the value, add amenities, really clean up the place, provide better service, tangible service, raise rents, and then sell it for a multiple. And you exit and you come out, right? So that's what a syndication is. So just because we're on the topic of exits, I'd like to mention, growing up, I always thought the idea was you buy a house and you never sell it, right? We've actually shifted our mindset that every investment requires an exit because most amount of money is made on the exit. We actually tell our investors at least every 10 years, cycle your home. Even if that means you sell the home and buy the neighbor's house, do it because you always need to keep exiting. Theoretically, nobody ever buys a neighbor's house, right? But they get the idea.
So what's the point of that?
So you buy a home. Typically, you're not trying to buy your neighbor's house that you live in because it's too expensive. You're buying outside of the city, further out, wherever you are. And you kind of wait till that area develops and the value goes up. You sell that, and then you go out again and you buy 2 houses, right? And then you keep going. So that's the idea there. So always have an exit. Or a good idea is every 5 years, around 5 years, you should look for an exit. That's just a thumb rule. Not, nothing solid there, but 5-ish years you're looking for. An exit doesn't have to be a hard exit either. It could be a soft exit. It could be a refinance.
Right.
It could be a cash out refinance where you pull some money out. That's considered a soft exit.
So, Nithin, maybe you can help answer this question. You see people, obviously different stages of life, different journeys, especially through real estate, right? You see from the first-time home buyers. I'm assuming you've also worked with people that, have a large, extensive portfolio. How does one even get to that point, right? So as a first-time home buyer, for example, if you're a first-time home buyer, that might be the most daunting thing to look at. Like, this guy has 15 homes, 30 homes. Like, that's insane. How can you even obtain to that, right? So what would you say to people that are starting, right? Like, what is the game plan to get to a point like that?
Yeah, great question. So the game plan sort of stems with what Ramu said is recycling in a way, because it is at the exit that you make a lot of cash, and that could be your pool of capital to disperse into buying 2 more properties. Like, I have one client who is currently sitting with enough cash where he can comfortably buy 4 properties, and that's one person, 4 investment properties, and that person achieved that because of its job category and the pay salary and things like that. So he has disposable income. In this situation, for people who are starting off, it's better to start off with something that's comfortable, you understand, and you can manage by yourself if you want to get in the dirt, or if you want to have somebody else manage the property manager. That's also a great way. For me, if it's a first time investor, I try to guide them in the most common sensible investment, because I don't want them to jump into something that they think looks shiny, but once you get into it, it's completely not what they're expecting. So for example, what I do is majority of my investors that I work with are first time investors. Their ultimate goal is to go 4 or 5 properties. And one investor that I can recall, they will say, hey, I want to own a property, I want to have cash flow. And when they mention cash flow, I'm like, do you understand what the fundamentals of cash flows are? Like the things you mentioned, the 6 things, right? PITI, HOA, and all this stuff. Having them help to understand that, and then you work your way from there. Once the investor can understand the investor terminology and things like that, then I feel like, okay, now you know exactly what it is. Let's reevaluate the plan you initially mentioned when you called me. We want to own 4 properties. Do you think that's realistic? They're like, oh, maybe not. Because the reality is, in Austin, properties that are going on rent right now, that acquired 2-3 years ago, are not cash flowing for almost 4 years. Because mortgage, because of interest rates and things like that, have reached such a peak, or just reached a limit where rent cannot catch up. If it does, Austin's rental market would just go to crap, because there's literally no one that can afford rental markets. So those are the discrepancies that people are thinking about. So to answer your question, It's a great question because it is aspiring to like building a portfolio that just brings in passive income, but the reality is it depends on the markets you're in. Austin's not a cash flowing city. It will not be for like 2 3 years unless you're putting a lot of money in initially. Then you can probably minimize your mortgage. But for the average investor, it is non cash flow for like 6 years at least. And it depends on where you're putting your finger on the map. When you were in the States, you're like, this is where I want to invest. Study that micro market, see what the trends are, what the cash flow timeline is. And then based on that, you'll be able to create a plan. It's like, okay, so if I'm cash flowing by this much, then I can save up that cash flow, get the next down payment put together for the next property, then recycle, and the thing just grows eventually. That's how you build a portfolio. But it just depends on the markets, honestly.
So the single family rentals are getting very complex, which is why we're shifting to multifamily investments and the syndications. Now, you talk about, so here's a tip that I tell let me start over. So sometimes we have first time investors come to us and say, well, I want an investment home in Frisco, Texas, or Austin, Texas. And they'll pick the fastest growing city in the country at the time and go, I want a passive investment in this highly coveted, extremely competitive area. Can you help me find one? I was like, if we can find a house just to buy, like anything, I think that'd be awesome. I don't think we're going to be able to really go in there and aggressively do it if you're a first time home buyer, right? I think if you're a seasoned investor and you have a lot of capital, you can go compete in these places. But typically, if you're at some party and your buddy goes, a good place to buy real estate? That city. It's probably too late to buy there. If everybody's heard about it, it's not where you want to buy.
You want to be there.
You are the person the investors are selling to.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be that person, right? Yeah. You want to be the investor that buys it before it blows up, which is why you need a good realtor who knows the market so well, knows where the market is going, and you go and buy there. Investment homes, typically when you buy an investment home, it's in an area that makes you slightly uncomfortable. Yeah. Okay. If you are very cushy and comfortable about an investment home, it's probably the wrong and you're a new investor, it's probably the wrong purchase. Now, seasoned investors are going to get real giddy about, going to the outskirts of the city because they know which way the city's growing and buying up these properties because they're like, oh, in 3 years, this property is going to go up like 30%, right? Projections, right? So you just really need to have a good team. Not all realtors work with investors. If you are an investor, make sure that you ask your realtor, are you an investor-friendly realtor? And do you have a team behind you that is also investor friendly? Like we have investor friendly mortgage loan officers. What does that mean? They know how to have a conversation with investors and prepare them for that type of loan. It is slightly different. There are some laws. You really want to know that everybody on the team knows what they're doing to support you to the maximum extent and also protects you from making any legal mistakes. We want to take the full benefit of the law and not break the law. And when you get to the investment side, it gets complex. It gets very complex. You need a tax person, you need a realtor, you need a mortgage loan officer. If you're just buying a single family investment home by yourself, at the minimum, you also need a really good property manager.
So we did talk about a few other topics here, like flipping Airbnbs, renovating. There's all these different types of avenues for investing, right? Let's go a little bit more into that. Let's start with the house flipping, right? So what really is that? I think people kind of understand product flipping or, smaller scale things, and I'm assuming in the macrocosm it's essentially the same thing. But, in more detail, what exactly is it?
So if you think about flipping, it starts with identifying a property you like, and then doing X, Y, and Z things to it to appreciate the value, then resell it. That's like the basic way of explaining it. The nitty gritty, what happens is, I can give it a real life example of what happens in Austin. Pre-COVID, Austin, like parts of downtown Austin was undervalued a lot. There were properties that were like just 50-foot lots 6,000 square feet of land space that were getting listed for like literally this is no homes, like broken down homes, literally to the core. They would buy the lots just for $700,000 because they're just land itself. They're buying it, break down the property, and then go all the way up from there, building property. That is in a way a flip, but it is more of like a renovation, like from the ground
That's
up.
a construction, right?
Yeah. It's a
brand new
It's
construction.
a brand new construction, but the value of the home, the value of the land, like doubles, or sometimes even like triples if that's worst case scenario,
Right.
or like if there's like really high level of demand. Flipping, the perfect way to think about it is Zillow. What Zillow does is one of their business models was they would go into a neighborhood, they will place an offer on a home saying, hey, your estimate is actually worth this much. Let's say there's a home that's like 3 bed, 2 bath, 2,000 square feet in Leander, Texas. Zillow comes in and says, oh, this home we will give you $500,000 in cash to buy this property, blah, blah, blah. They acquire the property, they maybe change up the carpets, they may repaint everything, maybe do some like light touches here and there, maybe put on like a nice sod in the front yard, paint it here and there. That might take about a month. That's like usually the labor intensive aspect of it, right? And then once that month expires and like everything's taken care of, they relist the property. Now at this time they probably will increase it by 35%. So now this home that they bought a month ago for $500,000, they're selling it for another 35%. That 35% is the margin that they make on. So flippers, their main business model is making money on that margin, right?
So you need to know what the after repair value
So
is.
ARV, which is
ARV.
a huge important number, ARV.
And then you have to figure out, you have to estimate and be pretty accurate at your estimation what repairs and the cost of repairs will go into it.
Exactly.
And then you have to factor in your profit, and you take ARV minus renovation minus profit equals purchase price.
Exactly.
And then you go and offer them that number, and you got to make that work.
So Zillow was doing that simple formula through like a huge like software engineers and all that stuff. But what they forgot to understand was, one side note of this, they forgot to add in the component of market cycles, micro market cycles, different like aspects of design, all those things like we're talking about. And that gave them an $8 billion, slap on the wrist, which was like really bad for them. And they shut down the market. I mean, they literally shut down their that division of the business. And that's a perfect example of like people who don't know what they're doing don't get into flipping, because that is very cost incentive, very time sensitive. Like you're investing in there unless you have like a manager who's like working for you on the side. But if you're a first time investor, flipping is like a kind of an intensive business.
So the other thing is also, if you buy a functionally obsolete home and renovate it and try to resell it, you're going to struggle. Those types of homes, you have to renovate and either sell it to an investor, or you have to have enough capacity to bite the bullet knowing that the money has already been invested, and then rent it and collect rent from it. Because only you cannot sell a functionally obsolete home to a new buyer. They don't want a pretty looking old house. Yeah. It's old. The design is old. You can't move a pillar. You can't move walls in residential homes. So you're kind of stuck with what you have. And so you really need to know the submarket and what people are looking for. Of course, people do this very successfully. Flipping has been around for decades. Flip to rent, flip to sell. If you find these homes and sell the option to an investor to do this, it's called wholesaling. You actually don't have to own any property. You legally just put the home under contract, and then you have 30 days to resell it and you collect a commission. So these are all ways people do real estate investing, but those are very, very common, right? Like you Google that stuff and that's the first thing that pops up on YouTube, those few things. Right. But you know what a lot of people don't, or I won't say a lot of people don't talk about this, but some information that's a little harder to come by is, where do you put the money? So like, so Nithin, you can't answer this. Shiva, let me ask you a quiz question.
Okay.
Right? Let's say there's 3 homes that are carbon copies of each other. They're on the same street, facing the same way. One homeowner puts a pool in the backyard. Another homeowner repaints the walls. And another homeowner changes the countertop to granite. And, let's say, so out of these, which homeowner or how many homeowners do you think can recoup the cost of their investment when they sell the home.
So, from my experiences, I would assume definitely the granite guy, right? The person that has invested in granite, which is very expensive. So, from my knowledge, I think that would be a solid one. And then I would have to go with, I know walls is definitely not something that would increase the value of a home. Maybe the pool, I can't really say. I think with the pool, long story short, no, but I think maybe certain home buyers would appreciate a pool.
So you understand real estate pretty well. So granite adds and retains value. Painting walls don't add value, but they won't scare buyers away, because if you have dirty walls, no one's buying your house. So it's a cost that you must input to sell. It's not a recoupable cost, but it's a minimum maintenance cost. A pool has no value when you resell it. You can spend $200,000 building a pool in your backyard, and when homeowners try to recoup that cost, they're real disappointed when the realtor says, you enjoyed it for 5 years, and that's what it's worth. It actually adds no more value to the price of the home.
But why is that?
So, a poll is like, it's like getting an extra addition to something that is personal to you. You haven't thought about who the next person in the line is. You're like the first one ordering the menu for the person behind you.
Right. They may not want it.
They may not want it. So you cannot say, because I spent this much, you have to now pay me for that much. Well, they're like, well, I didn't want it in the first place.
So it's not a value add.
But can't that be said for granite and things like that too?
Not necessarily.
Why is that?
So there's certain things that will always retain value in a home, right? High-end carpet, hardwood floors.
Expensive rock.
In certain markets, yeah, expensive rock, right? In the outside of the home. Whenever you renovate the kitchen, right? Kitchen appliances, things that you use every day will retain value. Because you're going to feel it and use it. You're going to use a microwave every day. You're going to use a stove almost every day. You're going to use a carpet every minute you're in the house. Hardwood floors have its own value. Granite has its own value. They have salvage value to them.
That's true.
So they're going to retain value. The truth is no one's going to buy your salvaged wood or granite.
Right.
But on paper, right, they retain salvage value, so therefore it retains value when you sell. It's a premium upgrade. Media rooms are also sunken costs. So the room itself has value, but anything in the room has no value when you resell. It's actually one of the most mixed liabilities that sellers get caught in, because they'll be like, I set up this badass media room, and the next guy walks in and goes, which guy set this up, right? Like, this doesn't look that great.
Yeah.
You know? It's very personal. This is like buying something for the next person. You don't know if they want that. You don't know if they want a horizontal screen or a more square screen or whatever. So that is actually one of the places that gets most renovated after homes are sold.
Media rooms.
Oh,
okay.
Because people typically,
it is a very personal space. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's an example of a sunken cost.
Right.
There are other things that you get a benefit in used homes that you cannot, that you will not get in a new home, but also cannot recoup. Like when you buy new homes, you will discover most builders don't put fans in every room. But when you buy used homes, there'll be a fan in every room. That's because somebody has spent the money to put a fan in that room. That is not a recoupable expense. Although, if you don't have fans in every room, you might not be able to sell the house.
Right.
So it's like painting the walls, right?
Right.
So there are some, when we have some new home buyers, they'll say, should I buy a used home or a new home? I was like, there's pluses and minuses to both. A used home will have everything that you think a home has. A new home will have less maintenance. I take that back. After the first year. The first year, you're going to be maintaining a bunch of stuff that you don't even know existed, right? Once you get all the warranty stuff fixed, then it'll be relatively low maintenance. It's a newer home. And they go, well, what do you mean? I was like, some homes don't come with towel racks or toilet paper holders. Some homes don't come with fans in all the rooms. And new home buyers were like, what? That's crazy. First time home buyers are like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, you pay close attention when you go. They're like, oh, but I saw it in the model home. Yeah, that's not 100% accurate, right? For example, when we were home shopping, we went to a model home. My wife fell in love with these blue cabinets. It was powder blue, very similar to your shirt color. And
which is like a light blue.
It's like a light blue,
right.
Yeah. And it looked very nice. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it looked very nice in that setup. And we went to the design studio and said, hey, where's the blue cabinet option? And they were like, oh, it's a custom color. Well, okay, well, how much does that cost? And they told us the breakdown, and it was like $6,000 just to repaint the cabinets. It's not the cost of the cabinet, just to repaint them. And this was a townhome. So it's not like sprawling cabinetry, right, in a big house. Yeah. And we just couldn't believe it. We're like, well, why would you paint the model home cabinets blue? And they're like, it's really pretty. You liked it, right? I was like, yeah. Well, I guess we're buying the house. I guess it worked, right?
Yeah.
So you can't believe everything that you see in a model home. There's certain things that they will do, certain things that they won't do. They put in a lot of extra effort. Or you could just try to buy the model home. That works too. So back to the investments.
So then I guess lastly what we have, which I know you guys have a lot of interest and some experience in, is Airbnbs, right? So the idea of Airbnbs, and I think there's a lot of conflicting information about this on the internet, with people thinking, some people believing Airbnbs to not be as safe, thinking that there are cameras everywhere. I do know Airbnb's policy about cameras is a little odd, right? I think you can have cameras outside, but not inside the house. But
cameras are okay for security, but not invasion of privacy.
Right. And then I think where the fear stems on that is, what if there are hidden cameras and things like that, right? So Airbnb's gotten some weird confusion of mixed feelings in the emotional side of the market, right? So
what you're referencing is a few unethical players, right, that you hear about in the news. Mm-hmm. That is not the norm. Right?
Correct.
You're going to have bad apples in every industry, right? And that's usually what you're going to be reading about in the news. It's really boring to read about, oh, here's a routine business owner that ran a routine year and made steady, stable profits. Right? And they have decent customer service. Like, there's no story there, right? So typically the things you read are the most terrible things, or the star luck success story that's always out of the norm. In terms of as an investor, Airbnbs have gotten a lot of attention recently because of the illusion of, oh, it's passive. I get a vacation home. It's lucrative. It can be, but we're hearing about all the lucrative ones. We're not hearing about the average ones. Right? You really have to do your homework. There's been a huge influx of money into Airbnbs that are just for Airbnb purposes, right? Not like I'm renting a room, or I'm going to rent my house when I'm on vacation. Like, I'm going to buy a house and decorate it just for it to be an Airbnb. If you don't do that right, it can be one of the largest liabilities that you have, because you have a mortgage that you own and you have CapEx that you've invested in this home that is all non-recoupable. Mm-hmm. You buy this chair, you walk out of the store, let's say this chair costs $500. Let's say you walk back into the store, you open the box, go home, set up this chair, decide you don't like it, pack it back in the box. Next day, within 24 hours, you go back and you say, I want to return it. What is the value of this chair right now? I'll be like, oh, $300, maybe $200. But there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, it's not new anymore. Therefore, it's worth less. Mm-hmm. It's like a car. You drive it off the lot, loses value. Then you have small decor like wall hangings. Zero value retention, right? It has an emotional value, but you can't put it on your balance sheet. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of cost that goes into an Airbnb, but it's high risk, high reward. And what we call it is a proactive investment. People talk about passive investing, and Airbnb is the furthest thing from passive. It's not even active. It's proactive. A single family rental is active, right? It's moderate. You spend a few hours a month, right? Maybe 1 to 2 hours a month maintaining the home, and you're pretty good. Accounting, check the mortgage, check on tenants, is all the bills paid. It's active. And then you have passive, which is multifamily syndications, warehouses, etc., where somebody else is doing all of the work. You have very limited risk, but you share in the returns on the way back. Now then, why doesn't everybody do syndications? There's a legal requirement that you have to be an accredited investor to invest in these investments. That's why. And if you're not an accredited investor, then you might not be able to invest in that.
Right. And it's larger sums of money, correct? You can't buy portions of, you could buy $50 worth of stock or $100, $5,000 of stock. But I think, what is it, like minimums are usually 50K?
They're like 50,000.
Yeah.
Depending on if you work with some very high profile syndicators, 100,000 is the minimum. So, I mean, you're talking about potentially somebody's annual salary, right, for one investment. So it's not necessarily affordable. But if you look at a single family investment, the cheapest single family home you're going to buy is going to cost you $65,000 to $85,000 cash out of hand, and not an Airbnb, just like an empty house that you buy and rent is going to cost you that. So it's very similar. It's just, and that goes back to, the pride of home ownership. It's more exciting to own your own home, not very exciting to be in a syndication, but syndications do provide a better return. They give you a better ROI than single family, plus mitigated risk, which is why it's exploded in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So I think now would be a good time for us to transition into the next episode. What do you guys think?
Sounds good to me.
Cool. So
by the way, one final thing I did want to mention.
Yeah.
We are syndicators. So if you're interested in learning more about investing in warehouses, multifamily apartments, land, also very cherry-picked, lower risk profile VC investments, as well as certain hedge funds, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to share more information on how you can get plugged into our system and potentially start investing with us for passive returns.
If you are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, yeah, you should totally hit up, or
our investors are all over the country.
Really?
Yeah.
So
a lot of our investors don't even live in Dallas.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I kind of already knew that. I just assumed a lot of your projects were around here.
Our projects are in Texas.
Right, but
you don't have to be
investments. Right.
Most of these people never see the project.
Right. So if you're interested, I will have Ramu's stuff in the description for that. And Nithin, you are just still staying local, correct? In Austin.
Yeah. So what Ramu meant by Texas is we both have license that is fully active within the state, within the boundaries of Texas. But usually realtors stay to a local area. So for example, I'm in the Austin metro. So anywhere within those 5 counties, you hit me up. I can give you all the information you need to know exactly what that is. The reason for that is those type of local agents are far more specialized in that area. It's like asking an agent in Florida how Texas market is, how Austin's doing. He probably doesn't know the nooks and crannies of where the Costco is, or where the new school's coming up, or where the new Amazon warehouse is.
That makes sense, right?
So those type of things. So for me, it's Austin. If you have any questions about Austin market, anything related between Austin, Dallas, and Houston, I can put you in connections with those people, like Ramu, for example, in Dallas, Houston, the same thing, and just make sure you're in good hands.
If you're looking for a primary home purchase, a home for you to live in, we operate in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex market, and you can reach out to us. If you're looking for an investment, we invest predominantly in Texas, and our warehouses are all over Central America, and further expanding coast to coast. You don't have to be where your investment is, provided that you have a team taking care of it. I would be a part of your team. As long as I'm close to your investment, you don't have to be.
I just wanted to say personally that these two guys are awesome at what they do. They're very social. They're very, from my personal experience, they really do try to connect with you and try to see what you are looking for. And they're no BS guys too. So if they don't think something will work out for you, they will tell it to your face. They will be honest with you. And, truly love what these guys do. If you're interested or you want to learn more, everything that you need to find them or more information will be in the podcast description. And thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next episode of the mini series.
See you on the next episode.
See you guys.